Thank you very much. So my name is Tomáš Pajdla, and I'll be presenting results of RMP, Robotics and Machine Perception, in the year 2025. And so let me start with that. So we are quite a large group. We are like 39 researchers and PhDs, plus some undergraduate students. And we comprise currently of 5 groups: Applied Algebra and Geometry, Intelligent Machine Perception, Intelligent Mobile Robotics, Robot Perception, and Spatial Intelligence groups. These groups have various sizes, ranging from the smallest AAG to the largest IMP. And altogether, last year we published 42 papers. There is a distribution among the quality and IDs kind of. So we have like number of journal papers, number of excellent conferences, and then some general lower-end conferences as well. Besides that, we were successful in being selected, for our results being selected among those selected results in M17 plus evaluation. We received 3 times excellent grades, 1 number 3, continuing to contribute substantially to this tier of evaluation at CERC and CTU from last years. There are some US patents delivered and updated last year, about 10 plus industrial applications, and we have a successful new tenured researcher, Thorsten Zettler, just passed his tenure last year, so it's congratulations. And 6 PhDs from our group graduated last year, so this is like general. Now here on the right panel, you may see the list of the publications. And today we will go over several of those, and we will go one after a group another. Basically in the order which is listed on the left panel. And that means that I will start first with AAG and present my first contribution. Okay, so let's try this. Very good. So this is the program. So I will start with the first one and then we'll go on. So, okay, so AAG is dealing with computer vision, geometry, and algebra. And I will be presenting a paper which has been as a highlight paper at CVPR 2025. Highlight paper means was selected among top 15% of papers, according some evaluation. This is a top conference of computer vision. That year received 13,000 submissions, 2,800 papers were selected. So this is like the top of the top in our field. And this work was done in collaboration of me and 3 mathematicians from various places. Kohn is our long-term collaborator, and her postdoc, Orlando Marigliano, and Andreas Hahn was actually kind of joining us in this effort. So this is about rolling shutter cameras. So rolling shutter effect is something which is appearing everywhere around us. So on the left panel, you see what happens if you have a global shutter camera. Global shutter means it just takes image instantly, whole image. And rolling shutter, as I will explain, is a little bit different principle, which is all around us. And what you see is kind of a strange effect of wobbling or kind of distorting the image. So this is what happens if you pan the camera quickly, relatively quickly to compare to the speed of acquisition. So what are these rolling shutter cameras? These images are acquired line by line. This is like old TV, like old analog TV when you are scanning, sending an analog signal along a serial line, and then again scanning back things and painting back things on a screen. So this is exactly what's happening with rolling shutter these days, more or less. It's going a little bit differently, line by line, not really scanning point by point, but in some sense it's similar. And the advantage is that you serialize the signal going out from the camera. So this is very useful. It gives you kind of unified interface, and it allows you to avoid buses which are complicated and different. So this is appearing everywhere. So all your mobile cameras are like that. Almost every camera is like that. Of course, not everyone. There are still segment of cameras for let's say, autonomous driving. Why is it so? Because these cameras have a big problem that if object is moving, camera is moving, then images are distorted. So this is the principle of acquisition. So we have a wheel on the left as being seen by a camera, and on the right is how it's scanned into the image. So you may see what's an important point, that the blue region, for instance, appears twice. So some points in space will appear multiple times in the image. So this is actually becomes very complicated scheme geometrically. So if the motion is slow, as you may see on the left panel, we get some distortion. If the motion is fast, we see chaos. So that's a problem. Of course, this must match the speed of scanning, as speed of scanning is fast. So in normal photography, if you move slowly, you don't see it. You just have some distortion. Distortion which doesn't mind if you are just looking at the image and interpret it. But of course, if you run some sensitive things like structure for motion, exact measurement, this may be completely distorting or destroying your results. So that's an example which you can see. So it looks crazy, right? So, but this is actual photograph, of course, matched nicely to the speed of the propeller, such that it just breaks into pieces. And that you can try with your phone, and with a fan or whatever you can do, you may see interesting results. It's fun. Unfortunately, these camera models for this rolling shutter in general are completely intractable. Everything is very complicated. So all standard 3D vision doesn't work. So just you can forget about what has been done. Things don't work, or work approximately, don't work accurately, and so on. So what we do here, we will look at certain class of these rolling shutter cameras, which we call order 1 cameras. And those are such that they see every point in space just once. This is the same like a perspective camera. It also sees every point in space just once, not multiple times. Now you can generalize it and go from static cameras to moving cameras, rolling shutter cameras, keeping this property. It's interesting that it's a limited class, but it's still tractable. That's important. But it's also practical. So of course, it includes global shutter camera, the standard perspective camera. It includes the translating cameras, which are like scanners, which translate in space. But it also includes like flatbed scanners, for instance. So this is actually a large class of cameras which appear around us. It also approximates, in some sense, general situations. So it's kind of interesting. And our paper here is about developing theory and geometry for these cameras. So what we do, very shortly contribution, we develop a model of the camera. We have some characterization in terms of motion in space and how this camera can move in order to generate such order 1 cameras. We can study what images of lines are, how the lines in space project to images. We can study small reconstruction problems, these basic reconstruction problems, what can be reconstructed, how many points, how many lines, and so on. And we are studying on some important classes which have appeared before. So basically the results. So here we have some model which works in terms of the scanning plane. So basically image is scanned line by line. So if you shoot back that line to the image to space, you get a plane. So this we call rolling plane. So these rolling planes are scanning the images. And then in terms of rolling planes and in terms of the curve along which camera moves as it scans, we can characterize what these things must satisfy in order to produce this camera which sees every point in space just once. And this characterization is complete here. What's interesting may be that these scanning planes, for this to happen, must all intersect in a single plane in space, in single line in space. So it's kind of interesting. It's very geometrical, so we can clearly say when this happens, when this doesn't happen. We can look at how lines from space image into images. And we see that these are higher degree curves. Degree depends of the curve on the degree of the curve along which camera center moves. There is some relationship. We can study those small reconstruction problems. So we can here you see in 3D two lines and 3 points on those lines. And then we have those images of them, which are distorted, they are conic in this particular case for a certain situation. And now we may study how many such points, lines, in what arrangements we need in order to be able to reconstruct points and lines in space and camera positions with respect to those points and lines. And there is a full characterization which is summarized in the table which I am showing below. And finally, we were looking at some class of cameras which we studied before, which have some nice property, they have some special model. This allows to do practical tasks like reconstructing pose of a camera from seeing points in space and so on. So altogether, we have a full theory of order 1 rolling shutter cameras, not something which is kind of parallel to classical computer vision, which make a step beyond perspective camera to more realistic and more interesting models which are all around us and which might be hopefully an avenue towards kind of extending structure for motion from classical perspective situation to this rolling shutter situation. So we have a paper which is rather large, but it's self-contained and happy read. Thank you. Okay, and now I will invite Josef. Please go on.
Oh, it's shown only on one slide or one? No, but I mean the screen is only one of them.
Yeah, this is only one slide.
Okay, one screen. Okay, so good afternoon. So I will tell you more about my team Impact. So we are about 15 to 20 people, depending how we count the master students. And our area of research, we have two areas of research. One of them is we are developing machine learning techniques to help us understand how robots could learn from interacting with the environments, with applications in developing, say, assistive robots. And the second area where we work on is developing machine learning techniques for advancing how we understand nature and the human body, in particular in protein engineering, with applications developing new drugs. Last year we were sort of quite lucky to have a number of publications in top-tier venues, so we are very happy about this. And this session, we are going to present 3 of them. So 2 of them which are on this area of vision and robotics, and the third one is going to be in the area of protein engineering, as you will see. So I will introduce the first publications and give you a little bit of broader context for this learning for robots, and then Petr Kouba is going to talk about the protein engineering paper. So just to give you a bit more context, you probably have heard of what's called vision language action models, VLA. So these are large, you can think of language models, which have input, as if the pointer works, we have input images and a language command, but they don't generate images or they don't generate text. They actually generate sort of commands for a robot. So the output of this is like a 1 second of a motion of a robot. So they hold a huge promise because they may open the possibility of generalization for the robots. They could come to different environments, to different things. But the issue is that they require a large amount of training data to be trained. So, and we are talking of hundreds of thousands or millions of, actually no one really knows how to make it really work. Millions of trajectories of the robot performing tasks. So, and that's what I would like to talk about. There are many other issues. They can hallucinate, which we are also looking at. So maybe we'll hear more about this next year. But in these 2 papers, we are looking at the task of how can we get large amounts of data for these robots. And just to illustrate for these models, just to illustrate the problem, this is the Franca robot in our lab. This is actually a teleoperation device, which was built in our lab, and this is here me trying to teleoperate the robot to correct the trajectory. So if you take an example what the robot motion, this may take a minute or so, and it's a tedious process, and imagine you have to collect 1 million of these, or maybe billions, so this would be a huge effort. So instead, what we are looking at, what if we could actually augment existing data, say from YouTube, where people show how they do things with additional information, and this is an example of extracting the object pose of so here is the input is the video, and here this is the estimated trajectory of the object in 6D translation and rotation, and this is the computed trajectory of the robot, which imitates this motion. So we are working on making this work large scale. Imagine we could augment with such additional robot information all videos on YouTube when people show how they do things. So you could have a large amount of training data so to pre-train these large models to do stuff for you. So we are looking at scaling this up. This was one example video. We are looking at scaling this up. We've collected in the past data sets in order to do that. And this paper, which I would like to talk about now, the first one, is actually in order to do the 6D post-estimation, you need to localize the object. So we've developed here a method which we ran on large scale, and it was the main author is Evangelis Kazakos, a postdoc with us. He cannot be here today. I'm presenting for him. It was a paper published at ICCV, which was on the top vision conferences, which was in Hawaii in October. And in this work, the input is a video, and the output is a caption describing what's happening in this video. But in addition, we also identify noun phrases. These are colored here. But what's important, we also identify the object locations consistently in the video for this. And what's interesting is we would like to do that on a scale of millions of videos on YouTube. So the main contribution of this paper is a model which allows us to do that. We collected large-scale developed a method to collect large-scale data set, which is about 1 million videos, and developed a model. The new components are, we built on a still image model for a similar problem. We extended it to video. So these red components are new, and they allow us to first localize the boxes and extend this problem to video. And here are some example results of the model where this is the video, then there is the language description and the location of the objects. And at the moment, we are working on using this as input for large-scale 6D pose estimation, and a step towards this goal is going to be shown by Georgi Ponimatkin, where we are working on methods to extract 6D object trajectories on a larger scale. Thank you.
Okay, so I will present to you our paper, 6D Object Pose Tracking and Internet Videos for Robotic Manipulation, which was accepted and presented at ICLR 2025 in Singapore. And the idea that we wish to solve is how to learn complex manipulation skills by watching videos of humans manipulating objects. But the problem here is that the videos are RGB only and unconstrained, meaning we do not know anything about them. And they contain unknown objects. And this poses a big problem for the current methods to extract the motion, because one of their main assumption is that we know 3D model of the object in advance, and we have some controlled environment, or we know depth data, which is missing from your typical YouTube video. And here you can see an example we use in the paper. It's taken from a YouTube. A person is pouring the juice into the glass, and we do not know exactly the shape of the object and what is it in advance, so we cannot prepare for that. And so how we solve that is and key innovation is that our method is the first method for 6D pose estimation based on an approximate object. So we do not need to know exact object, we just know some approximation. And the key novelty is that we have a scalable method that has a database of prepared 3D objects, and then we match them to the object in the scene, which allows us in the end to extract 6D pose from any environment. How you can imagine how it works is that you have an input image taken from some video in the wild. Based on the input object, we retrieve the mesh, the most similar object we have in our database. Then we align it to the object, and if it's a video, we can then transfer that to Robotic Manipulator to replay that video, that trajectory. So let us look a bit in details how it works. As I mentioned, it's a novel approach to estimate 6D pose with an approximate object. As a first step, we need to reliably detect the object, because we do not know in advance what we are detecting. So we use an open set detector and a segmenter with some generic query object, and it gives us bounding boxes and masks for the object in the scene that we have. Then based on that, we need to find the closest and most similar mesh in a database. For that, we create a database of pre-rendered and pre-extracted features, and we match the cropped object from the scene to the database, and based on some similarity measures, we output a mesh that is most similar per the database. We also encounter a fact that we do not know scales of the meshes in advance, and so we need to estimate the scale to precisely estimate geometry. We do that by first pre-computing a database of the object scales from a large language model as some database of the objects. And then we also combine that with a relative depth map to allow for variation in the object scales in the scene. Having all this information, we then can extract rotation, matching the object in the scene to the most similarly rotated template in the database. And by taking a 3D geometry of an object, we can back project it into a bounding box and get a translation. And so this gives us rough approximate rotation and translation for the object. So here you can see some results on the static scenes. First column is an input. The middle column is prediction of our method. And the overlay is how it looks like when you overlay the output to the input. And please notice here, for example, we can actually model some occlusions, meaning that our method is able to globally recover the scene up to some approximations. It's of course not ideal. But a key innovation is that we can transfer those instructional videos to the robot, and by tracking the objects across the video, we can then retarget the motion to the robot. So here you can see at the top, where is it? Oh yeah. At the top row, you see the input video. At the middle row, you see predicted object with the poses that are tracked. And below, at the bottom row, we see motion transfer to the robot that we can actually then replay. And we can scale this method based on how to 100 million to many, many videos. Recover, for example, the library of motions for the pouring. It's semi-automatic step at this point. And later on, we can also compute the trajectories based on those motions and hopefully replay them on robots or use them for robotic training to fine-tune VLAs, which we hope is the future of this method. So thank you for your attention, and if you're interested, the code base is available on GitHub.
So next talk will be from Petr Kouba. Please, Petře.
Okay, hello, so my name is Petr Kouba, and I'm a PhD student in Josef's group. And I'm part of the subgroup that works on applications to biology and proteins specifically. So today I will be presenting our paper called Learning to Engineer Protein Flexibility, which we published last year at ICLR, which is an A-star conference and one of the top 3 venues for machine learning research. Let me start by giving you some relevant basics. So proteins are biomolecules which are present in every living cell, and they are a chain of smaller molecules called amino acids. So as such, they can be represented, for example, as a protein sequence, which is just the ordered sequence of the amino acids that the protein is composed of. But these amino acids don't stay in this linear shape. They can interact across the sequence, which leads the protein to form a complex 3D shape, the protein structure, which we can see an example there in red and green. But the proteins, they don't just stay in that static 3D structure, because they usually undergo some dynamics, which gives the proteins another important property, which is the protein flexibility. And we can see an example of this here. For example, the red and green structure is a protein, where the green part is flexible, and we call it the loop. In this example, there's also 2 more molecules, the blue one and the yellow one, which are bound to the protein. And we can see that this flexible green loop, because of its flexibility, it can move, and it can lead to the occlusion of the binding site for the yellow molecule. So the yellow molecule cannot bind anymore and unbinds, which has important consequences in the cell and serves as an illustration of how protein flexibility is directly linked to protein function. So in our paper, we aim to engineer protein flexibility, and we hope that this strategy can be used for engineering of protein function. And the application for us would be, for example, to engineer enzymes which could be used to decompose, for example, toxic compounds in the environment in a sustainable way. In the paper, we formulate 3 challenges. The first one is how to even quantify protein flexibility and what kind of data to use. The second challenge is to be able to predict protein flexibility in a fast way. And thirdly, we want to be able to generate a protein sequence according to our desired flexibility profile. Let me now tell you how we tackle these challenges. So firstly, we surveyed available data and benchmarked relevant baselines to find out that physics-based molecular dynamic simulations are the most reliable method for us to quantify protein flexibility. From those molecular dynamic simulations, we define a simplified measure, which we call the flexibility profile, and it's this pink sequence of numbers where one number corresponds to the flexibility, one number quantifies the flexibility of one amino acid of the protein. Then we develop protein flexibility predictors. We developed 2 of them. First one is called FlexPert-Seq, and that one takes on the input the protein sequence and predicts the protein flexibility profile from the molecular dynamic simulations on the output. The second predictor is called FlexPert-3D, and it's a multimodal predictor which takes not only the sequence on the input, but also the protein structure, and again is trained to predict the flexibility profile. Thirdly, we condition a generative model by the flexibility profiles to be able to generate protein sequences conditioned both on protein structure and protein flexibility profile. We do this by taking an existing protein generative model, which is already structure conditioned, and we extend it by allowing for the flexibility conditioning. So in quantitative evaluation, our predictors were able to outperform their relevant counterparts in terms of the Pearson correlation of the predicted flexibility profile with respect to the ground truth flexibility profile. And we can also see some qualitative examples of the flexibility prediction where we color code the flexibility prediction such that the red is like flexible part of the protein and blue is a rigid part of the protein. In the paper, we were also able to show that our strategy for generating the flexibility condition protein sequences could successfully generate more flexible protein sequences for given protein structures. And for more details, I'm happy to refer you to our paper or code, which are available. And I would like to thank my colleagues and to you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Okay, please go on.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. My name is David Zahrádka, and I'm a PhD student at the Intelligent and Mobile Robotics Laboratory. And the laboratory is headed by Libor Přeučil, and my supervisor is Miroslav Kulich. Here you can see an overview of papers that we published last year, with some still in review. And I would like to talk about one of them, which is related to one of our research interests, which is transport planning for robotic fleets. And we presented this paper at IROS last year. So in transport planning for robotic fleets, there are a couple of problems that we need to solve. The first one is collision-free path planning. When we have a robotic fleet, we need to ensure that each robot has a path to its goal without colliding with the other robots. Also, we can deal with task assignment, which means deciding which robot will fulfill which task. And after we have these plans, we can deal with plan execution, which means actually executing the plan in practice when the robots are subjected to delays and so on. These problems can be formulated as one of the many variants of the multi-agent pathfinding problem, which is widely studied, and it has many applications. It was applied to autonomous warehouses, autonomous production plants, autonomous intersections, UAV path planning, and also even pipe routing. So what do we do in our lab? We develop methods for collision-free path planning. We develop methods for task assignment. We also are interested in plan execution methods, which are able to execute the plans safely, even when the robots are somehow delayed during the execution. And we also develop simulators, and we have a real-life demonstrator, which we use for experiments. Briefly about multi-agent pathfinding. So a multi-agent pathfinding is an NP-hard problem where we have a set of agents, each with a starting and goal location. And the goal is to find collision-free paths in a shared discrete environment so that the robots cannot crash into each other or into static obstacles. There is one strong assumption, and that is that the agents are perfectly synchronized, which means that every single discrete time step they perform exactly one action. and also that they are holonomic. Although variants of the problem with non-holonomic agents, kinematic constraints, and they also exist, and also like dealing with imperfect execution, so making plans that are robust to delays. And now to our ARIS contribution. So usually multi-agent pathfinding is solved with two-level solvers. At the high level, there is some, or actually, I'll start with the lower level. There is a single-agent path planner, which can be an A-star, or its improved version called Safe Interval Path Planning, or SIP. And at the higher level, there is some form of collision resolution framework, which actually deals with the collision in the paths found by the lower-level planner. The high level usually constrains the lower-level planner, and that's how it deals with collisions. So the output from the lower level is always a complete path, which means that when an agent has to wait, it always, the lower level always decides the exact waiting location while planning the path only for the agent. So when you look at the example on the right, we have three agents, red, green, and blue, and we want to find collision-free paths for them, and we plan them in this order. So first we find a path for the red agent, which is straightforward. Then we want to find path for the green agent, but we see that it has to wait in the middle cell for one time step, which is fine. That's still okay. But the problem is when we want to find a path for the blue agent, which is now blocked by the green agent, and the blue agent has to wait for 2 time steps. And this is the problem we want to address, and we did address, by developing the partially safe interval path planning principle, which is an improvement over the state-of-the-art single-agent path planners. And it can, by post-processing, it can actually relax the waiting locations. So when we want to find the path for the blue agent, we can actually see that when the blue agent wants to find a path, we can move the waiting location for the green agent 1 step back. And this is without sacrificing any length of the path for the green agent. So we don't need to choose it immediately. We will decide later based on the other agents on the lower level. So imagine we have some red agent, and we have a path for the red agent, which goes through the vertices B and C. And the red agent has to wait somewhere later in its path. So we create the partially safe interval, the psi, which you can see as the red ovals. You can see them as the red ovals in the figures. And now we are looking for a path for the green agent. So the green agent also wants to go through B and C. And it can enter B at the same time that the red agent might be there. So the red agent can be in B and C at any time during these 2 intervals. So the green agent can enter the psi, but it has to follow some specific rules so that it still leaves room for the red agent. So there are some specific rules that it has to follow. There is one more, which regards like movement when one agent is moving against the other. And these rules have to be strictly followed, otherwise there would be no path remaining for the red agent. Once we find a path for the green agent, it removes some of the options for the red agent. So once we finish looking for the path, we have to update the partially safe intervals so as we only keep the feasible options for the red agent again. So it's a simple update that ensures that the safety is preserved. And here are some experimental results. So using this principle increases the success rate, and it also decreases the solution cost. So it works well, and it does so by up to 5%. And that is all. Thank you.
So hello, my name is Viktor Kozák, and I will be presenting our work from the group of Intelligent and Mobile Robotics on aerial mapping and localization on photovoltaic power plants. The work was done as a part of the DPRF projects with focus on the development of a system for diagnostic and predictive maintenance on power plants by autonomous means. The main task was to develop an approach for periodic thermographic and visual inspections. Our main focus in the group was to develop algorithms and methods for autonomous flight control and trajectory planning, automatic anomaly detection and sensor data evaluation, and hopefully to integrate it on all in the system for detection and prediction of failures in the system. Our work was done in cooperation with the CTU Faculty of Electrical Engineering. There were two main research areas done apart from the engineering work in our group. So one of them was visual localization of UAVs, when we developed a new localization method that directly integrated the detections of photovoltaic modules into the localization pipeline, which enables us to precisely localize the UAV and optimize its position and movement on the trajectory. To my best knowledge, we are the maybe only ones, or at least the first ones, to actually implement a method that returns a 6 degree of freedom position relative to the power plant structure. The benefit of this method is that the segmentations of the photovoltaic modules can directly be reused for anomaly detections during the inspection procedure. The second area focused on the areal mapping of the power plants, for which we developed a new method for mapping and acquiring the layout of the power plant and the georeference model of the power plant that's usable for maintenance and for power plant inspection. Now, for the work done on visual localization, this is the lightweight pipeline that we've developed in our group. This is a simplification where we first start by detecting individual photovoltaic modules in the image. Then we infer semantic structures that relate to the layout of the power plant and associate the detections with the positions of individual PV modules in the power plant model. From this, we can estimate the position of the camera relative to the power plant that we are looking at and use these for navigation. As I said before, the benefits are that we can also use the segmentations directly during the power plant inspections. The method achieved quite good results. It's a real-time method for position estimations. It allows us to compensate for the inaccuracies in the power plant model, inaccuracies in the GNSS position estimate, and actually correct for some path planning deficits and some inaccurate data. The method was tested with 3 different segmentations methods, which 2 of them we have developed in our group and on several flight scenarios and 2 power plants, and the paper is currently ready to be submitted for a Q1 journal. The mapping method was secondary research on this project, but it was motivated by the need to get a detailed and structurally sound model of the power plant. And we used basically similar principles as for the localization methods. The overview of the mapping pipeline is in a picture currently you are seeing. The basic is to take several overview images, reconstruct a 3D model of the power plant, and then use these original images to detect individual PV modules in the images, to infer the structure of the power plant in the image, and then match individual detections with other images in the data set, in the 3D reconstruction data set, globally optimizing the structure and the positions of the individual photovoltaic modules and registering them in the global layout of the power plant. We have achieved satisfactory precisions for most maintenance and inspection procedures. We have reduced the necessary number of images acquired compared to the state-of-the-art methods, and we have experimentally verified the methods on 2 different power plants and published the results in a Q2 journal. So that's it from our group of intelligent and mobile robotics, and thank you.
Hello, I'm Ondřej Holišovský. The next three presentations will be from the Robotic Perception Group. I'm going to present interactive robotic moving cable segmentation by motion correlation, a paper published in IEEE Robotics and Automation Letters journal. Here a human asks a robot to segment a cable by first grasping it at a given grasp point. The robot grasps the cable and moves it using two periodic actions. The first action moves the cable along the cable axis. The second action moves it in a direction perpendicular to the cable axis. The robot records a sequence of images and grip poses while moving the cable. Its goal is to segment the grasped cable in the last frame of the recorded sequence. This work integrates visual and proprioceptive perception to aid robotic cable manipulation or robotic cable segmentation, even when the robot or the grasped cable sometimes perturb neighboring cables, and even when robot arm segmentation masks are not available. The motion correlation or MCOR method is the core component of the proposed robotic system. Repeated gripper motions in different directions typically move the grasped cable predictably while occasionally disturbing the neighboring cables. MCOR exploits this predictability to effectively segment the grasped moving cable from its surroundings. MFN Prop FT neural network estimates the optical flow between the last target frame, which is this one, and each frame of the recorded sequence. As the arm is outside of the field of view in the target frame, it does not cause any optical flow. For each action and each pixel of the target frame, MCOR computes the optical flow displacements in meters along the principal flow direction. It also computes the corresponding gripper displacements along the motion direction of a given action. So these gripper displacements are here, flow displacement here. And then MCOR fits a linear model to predict the flow displacement given the gripper displacement and computes the coefficient of determination COD. MCOR labels as moving or votes for only those pixels where the slope or interactivity and the coefficient of determination of the linear model are sufficiently large. The interactivity thresholding ensures that only sufficiently interacting cable segments are labeled as moving. The coefficient of determination thresholding suppresses the areas where the relationship between the gripper and flow displacements significantly differs from a linear function. These are sample cable segmentation results when the robot interacted with the cable only at a single grasp point as indicated by the black crosses. The red segmentation masks were produced by passive state-of-the-art cable segmentation methods FastDLO, MBEST, RTDLO, and the general purpose segmentation method SUM2, which is segment anything. The motion segmentation methods MSEG, which is the baseline motion segmentation method, and MCOR, the proposed motion correlation one, produced the green segmentation masks. Only one interactive action voted for the light green pixels. Two actions voted for the dark green pixels, giving more confident segmentations. Although MCOR usually does not achieve the best recall, its precision and intersection over union are the best. Here is a sample video of a single grasp segmentation. So there is the first action and the second action, the two periodic linear actions, and the resulting segmentations. This is one of the more challenging use cases where the cables, or in this case ropes, are quite entangled. We also proposed the grasp sampling method to enable cable exploration with multiple grasps. Using multiple grasp points lets the robot reach almost full segmentation recall while preserving high precision, which allows one to, for example, recognize which cable endpoints are connected by the explored cable. The average recall tends to grow with more grasp points. The precision remains almost unchanged. Thank you for the attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vladimír Smutný, and I would like to present a feasibility study on the topic measurement of wooden boards useful with. The work was done with my colleagues of Pavel Krsek and Radoš Kověra. Our customer, company Sedlar, manufactures coffins and it purchases wooden boards. And it pays supplier for the usable board width. The usable means that it should not contain bark, vein, knots, cracks, and other defects. They purchase roughly 3,000 boards per day. So we have installed the camera system on the roof of the room and captured images of boards. Our approach is based on a mixture of classical computer vision methods and deep learning. Actually, neural networks were used for a difficult task to find the edge of the wooden boards where it meets bark or vein or other edge. And the rest of the processing was done using classical methods like dynamic programming, etc. And this allows us to significantly reduce the number of annotated images which were needed. So actually we used about 200 images with about 3 boards each. The current workflow of the board with measurement is that at the supplier sawmill, the worker measures or estimates the board width. He writes the number with the chalk on the board. Then later it transcribes it onto the paper and into computer so that the invoice can be issued. The planned method is that the camera will capture the image and we will do everything automatically. So the green part is basically usable area. Then we inscribed the largest rectangle which can fit into this green area. We estimate the scale of the image because the boards are at different levels so that we can provide metric measurements. And so the data are measured at the Sedlar company and sent to the supplier so that he can issue invoice. Last year we delivered a feasibility study and currently we are negotiating the delivery of the production system. In parallel, we developed the algorithm for detection of knots and cracks. And also we are negotiating with the company installation of robot for restacking of boards from packets into drying stacks. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Petr Vance. I am a member of Robotic Perception Group, and this work is about Ilesia, interactive learning of robot situational awareness from camera input. This is a collaboration with TU Delft from Netherlands, and this paper was published in Robotic and Automation Letters journal. So I will start with the motivation. So in our lab, we teach robots different skills. So for example, you can see on the lab manipulating the Roboton taskboard. So the robot, we can demonstrate a motion. So the robot picks up a probe and then does the measurement. And while the door is open, and if we close the door, then this demonstrated motion when it is played is not successful. It can fail, there is a collision, and we want to pause before failure. So this is the main question of this paper. So in real time, when learn skill becomes unsafe, we want to pause before anything bad happens. So we have a visual input that we want to use, mounted camera on a robot, eye in hand, that observes the scene. And we want to detect both labeled scene situations, but also novel ones that the robot didn't see before. So you can see, for example, the hands on the right or the cables on a scene and so on. So this is an interactive learning loop. On the top, you can see the learning from demonstration pipeline. So as I said, the person comes and manipulates, does the kinesthetic teaching, and we can save it in a skill library. And then during the execution, if something bad happens, user can press a button and marks that, okay, this is risky, robot should remember that, and we train based on these data risk estimator. This is our proposed method. And this has got a good pro, that's these kinds of situations are trained on situations that the robot hasn't been trained on. And when the situation happens, okay, the risk estimation has got two parts. This is our proposed method. First is the video embedding. So first, in the start, we have the image, which is encoded into small Latin dimension space. And then we use Gaussian process regression method that computes the posterior distribution variables, the mean and sigma. The mean reflects the in-distribution behavior, and then the sigma computes the proxy for auto-distribution detection. And from these, we compute the risk score, and by clipping it between 0 and 1, so then the R, the risk score, is a value, no longer a distribution. So our results are for both known faults and for novel faults. So first I will start with the known faults. So on the left you can see the execution of the opening of the door. So at the start of the execution the door should be closed, and at the end it should be opened. And because the robot sees the door is open and not closed, it spikes the risk score, and we can detect there is something bad, and we can stop the execution. That's the same before the end. The door is closed, also it should be opened, and we say, okay, there is something bad. Okay, so we tested our Gaussian process method with some baselines, for example, with fine-tuned multi-layer perceptor method, and we found that GP and MLP models perform comparably, similarly when detecting previously seen labeled faults, but our GP model shows a clear advantage in handling novel situations. So for example, you can see on a left that we demonstrated a skill with the peg that is rotated to the left, and if we rotate and dislocate the peg by rotating it, the risk score grows, and then the peg becomes unpickable, and after some rotation we can say, okay, this is risky, and we can pause the execution. So this is the novel faults that the robot hasn't been trained on. So in summary, our GP model shows a clear advantage handling both novel situations and the one that it previously seen before. Thank you for your attention.
I'm Thorsten Sattler. I'm leading the Spatial Intelligence Group, which is part of AAG at the moment. And we are working on 3D reconstruction of scenes from images. And you can see one 3D reconstruction here, which we are able to relight and render from novel viewpoints. That's actually wrong slide. Right into the beginning. The 3D reconstruction process starts with a set of images. In the next stage, we are trying to position these images in space. So we try to figure out what's the position and orientation of each of these images. This is shown here. Each red pyramid corresponds to position and orientation of one image, and we also have a sparse estimate of the scene geometry. And then in the final stage, we can build a dense model that gives you something like this. So this is a dense reconstruction of the inner city of Aachen. Aachen is where I did my PhD. And in this talk, I'm going to talk about work around the process of 3D reconstruction in 3 categories: methods, benchmarks, and applications. We'll start with methods, and I'm going to present a paper that was originally presented at ICCV last year. ICCV is one of the main computer vision conferences. This was accepted, presented as an oral, which is less than 2% of all submissions, of like 10, 12,000 submissions. The focus here is on improving the reconstruction process. This is the same slide that I showed before, which is the part where we try to figure out where the images were taken in 3D space. And this process called structure of motion can be subdivided into 2 stages. The first stage looks at pairs of images and tries to figure out what's the geometric relation between the images, what's the relative translation and orientation. And once you have these pairwise relations, you can try to upgrade this to global relations. And our focus here was on the first part, meaning making the estimate of pairwise relations between images more robust and potentially efficient. And traditionally, so we're given 2 images, we would like to estimate the rotation and translation between them. And traditionally, this is based on establishing correspondences between the images and then solving systems of nonlinear of polynomials to estimate the rotation translation, which works well if you get good correspondences, but can fail quite easily. And at the same time, in recent years, we've seen that neural networks are becoming better at predicting scene geometry from a single image. So you have these monocular depth predictor estimators, which can take an image as input and give you a depth map, where each pixel says how far this pixel, like the corresponding 3D point, is from the camera, which actually gives us additional correspondences. So for if I take the correspondences between one image and the other, then I can upgrade them to 2D, 3D correspondences by using these corresponding depth values in the depth map. Or I can directly estimate correspondences between depth maps. And it turns out that if you combine 2D, 2D correspondences with this 3D information, you need fewer correspondences to estimate the pose, and you get more robust against a lack of correspondences in certain areas. There's only one issue, which is these monocular depth estimators are not scale consistent. So what you see here on the left is the input video. On the right, you see the depth map predicted by a state-of-the-art monocular depth estimator. And you can see that it jumps back and forth. This is the issue, is that from a single image, you can't predict without like very strong priors how far, what the size of the objects in these images are. Like, the geometry could be arbitrarily far away along the viewing rays. So what we did in this work is we tried to use these depth maps to improve relative pose estimation, and at the same time try to improve the depth maps by predicting consistent scaling factors. And here's a visualization of the results. On the left is what you saw before, the input video and the depth map that is scale inconsistent. On the right, you see that we can track the camera motion from frame to frame and produce a single scale consistent point cloud. And this is really just frame to frame without any global optimization on top of it. Here's on the left another qualitative example, 2 images, and then the corresponding point clouds that you get from the depth maps overlaid after using the relative pose that we computed. On the right, you see see some quantitative results. On the x-axis, like higher is better. It's essentially a measure of how many poses are accurate within a certain error regime. On the top, you see what you would get if you just do 2D correspondences. The second one is what you would get if you just take 2D, 3D correspondences, then 2 baselines, and then our approaches that try to use the best combination of 2D, 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 3D, and 3D, 3D correspondences, which, as we show, improves performance. Interestingly, it can actually also handle quite dynamic scenes where the main subject is actually moving, because there's enough correspondences in the background. But we were surprised to see how well it worked for a scenario that we didn't initially envision when we did it. So that was a method for improving the 3D reconstruction process. The next part is talking about benchmarking the 3D reconstruction process. So this is a video that I showed in the beginning. It's essentially, we build a 3D model where that we can now render from new viewpoints, and we can render it from different illumination conditions. And this rendering from different illumination conditions works in a way that you provide a target image an image that encodes the target illumination condition that you want, and then you try to transfer this onto the model. And that actually allows you then, if you want to have smooth transitions, you can interpolate between the appearance conditions of these images. I presented this paper actually last year, and we published it at NeurIPS, which is one of the main machine learning conferences in 2024. When we submitted the paper, we obviously had to present some quantitative results. You don't need to bother with the numbers, just look at the color coding. Red is third best, yellow is second best, green is best. So when we submitted the paper, we were doing quite well compared to the baselines, until one of the reviewers said, oh, but there's this paper that appeared on Archive like a few months before we submitted this. That's clearly better. Why should we accept your paper, right? And it turns out, if you look into this in more detail, then all of these methods, including ours, when they evaluate the method on images that are not in the set of images used to build the model, in order to render an image under the viewpoint of this test image and under the condition of the test image, they take the left half of the image to transfer the appearance in the image to the model, and then take the right half of the image to compute metrics. This last method did something slightly different. They used the whole image to transfer appearance, and then evaluated on either the one part or the whole image. And if you would take the same method and use the same evaluation protocol, then that would significantly drop performance, so that it would not be the best anymore. Which naturally leads to a question whether we can trust these novel view synthesis evaluations at all. And this is what we investigated for a NeurIPS 2025 datasets and benchmark paper, which we presented about last month. And it turns out that actually not necessarily. So here's a simple graph. You see different methods and their quality metric, like higher is better. And if we take one of the not top performing methods and change the evaluation protocol. So we're not changing the method, we're just changing how it's evaluated. And we're making a super small change, which is essentially how do we downscale the images from the test set that we compare against, because we don't do it on full resolution, which is something that you would not discuss in a paper. It's like tiny difference you would assume doesn't matter, but it matters. You can change performance quite drastically. And we observed this also for other small changes. It can happen that the differences between these tiny, slightly changed evaluation protocols can be larger than the changes, if you keep the evaluation protocol the same and compare different methods. So that's bad, because that means you can't necessarily trust numbers. So we developed NeurIPS baselines, which is a evaluation system designed to allow fair comparisons. It's essentially, the nice thing is you can run the original code. Everything is encapsulated in its own environment, no re-implementation, so no potential source of errors, but you fix the evaluation protocol. And we also provided a nice website, an online ranking system where you can actually load the 3D models reconstructed from each method and have a look at what the visual reconstruction quality is. You can download the reconstructions and so on and so on. And there's a detailed set of instructions how to get this thing, or how to get your methods into this framework. Which brings me to the last part of my 3 presentations, which is applications. And the application here is visual localization. Visual localization is assuming that we're given some sort of 3D model of the scene and a new image. We'd like to figure out where exactly this image was taken with respect to the 3D model. And we are interested in a version of this visual localization problem that admits there might be privacy issues. So here's an example. You have a robot that has limited compute, so it can't do localization itself, or it needs to localize in an area that's too large to store on its hard drive. So it would take images, it would send it to a server, and that would get back information where it is. And there are 2 ways this can be bad in terms of privacy. You could have someone who's intercepting traffic and then can see the original images. And if this robot is, say, a vacuum robot in your house that regularly takes images of your bedroom and all other rooms with you running around, that obviously this is something that you don't want. It's also something that, like the other privacy issue is actually that given that we're living in the age of hyperscaling in terms of machine learning, it's a question of time until companies that build these robots start selling your images for someone else to train on. So the question is, do we need to send actual images? What current state-of-the-art localization methods do is they don't actually send images, but they extract a set of features that is potentially sparse. So you have a set of positions in the image, and each has like a high-dimensional vector associated that describes part of the image around it. And there's a seminal result that showed that if you just take what is shown on the bottom left, these sparse sets of points and their descriptors, you can train a neural network that recovers the image content. Up to color, because that's typically lost, but you get the appearance of the poster in the background. You see where the monitors are, even though you don't have many features there, and so on and so on. You can recover the chessboard quite well. So our question was, can we design a representation that's better? And our answer was, we look at segmentation-based approaches. So the idea is we take an image, we extract a feature map, and then quantize the feature map. So we create a many-to-one mapping from pixels to segments, which introduces ambiguity and hopefully avoids revealing too much information. And you can do the same thing, and like we learn these feature maps to extract these feature maps from images, and we learn to build 3D models that encode these same feature maps, so that if we quantize them, we can get segmentation maps from these models. And we only need to train the features, and for localization, we just use the segmentations, so segmentation labels. So in terms of localization pipeline, you just replace images and 3D models with segmented versions of them. In terms of localization, this works by assume you get an initial pose estimate, GPS or something like this, and then you essentially render your model, render the segmentation map compared against the segmentation map that you extracted from your image, and you try to adjust the pose so that these 2 segmentation maps match. We first do this at 2 resolutions, one with a coarse set of segments and one with a finer set of segments. And that can give you poses accurate up to a few centimeters in good conditions. So, last question is, obviously, is this actually privacy preserving? Our answer to this is yes. So this is the example that I showed you, where we can recover detailed image content from a sparse set of features. Here is the same experiment. So you see the same input image, you see a segmentation mask extracted from it, and then you see the output of the network that tries to recover the original image, where you see still global content, which is unsurprising because that's preserved by the outlines of the segments. So you still see there are TVs, there's some table, there's some chairs, but you've lost information about what's in the background. It's a whiteboard, not a poster anymore. You don't see, at least you can't clearly identify that there's a chessboard. So you lose a lot of unique identifying details. And the network that we train is actually a diffusion model, so we could actually run the reconstruction process with different random seeds. And for the sparse features, we actually get like a rather stable reconstruction up to color. Whereas for segmentations, we actually get like very, very varying results due to the fact that there can actually be multiple instances of a room that lead to the same segmentation. So in that sense, they are much more privacy preserving than the actual like features or the actual images. And yeah, that was it. Thank you very much.